Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Wyatt Claypool Show. To put it mildly, this has not been a very cheery Christmas season for Prime Minister Justin Trudeau or his Liberal Party. Rightfully so. But if you don't support the Liberal Party, this may have been one of your favorite Decembers on record, because it is objectively a lot of fun to watch all of the issues that the Liberal Party has ignored for years finally come back to bite them. How hard is it biting them? Well, depending on the polling projection website that you look at, either the Liberals are going to come in third place or even fourth place in terms of the seat count in the 2025 election. And while there are a lot of Liberal MPs now saying that it's time for Justin Trudeau to step down, he should resign and maybe be replaced by Chrystia Freeland, or we should have a leadership election, it's too little too late, guys. All these liberals are complete hypocrites. They should have been out 5 years ago, 4 years ago. I'll even give them 2 years ago, saying that Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is not fit to be the leader of this country. But only now, when it benefits them to not lose their re-elections, do they finally come out and say, yeah, Justin Trudeau really has to go. And who's their replacements? Oh, Christy Clark, maybe, or Chrystia Freeland. That leadership election would be like watching paint dry. I would rather be poisoned than watch a leadership election between Chrystia Freeland and Christy Clark. It actually makes me want Justin Trudeau to stay on as prime minister, because at least he's funny in how terrible he is. Chrystia Freeland's just annoying. She is the definition, her and Christy Clark, of a bad politician. They are boring, they are annoying, they are dumb. But this is a headline that just came out recently, and again, I find it so hypocritical and funny because it probably is not going to make a hill of beans of a difference before the next election. So we see this from Six Buzz, but they're just reporting from other news sites. They say, hashtag report, Liberal MP Anthony Housefather says the vast majority of Liberal caucus wants Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to resign. But is that actually going to happen? I don't know. Justin Trudeau doesn't have to do anything until late January now, because we're on a holiday. What, are Liberals going to leave their families on December 25th to go down to Parliament to have meetings about getting rid of Trudeau? Probably not. Trudeau can play the waiting game. He's played it before. And I think that the Liberal Party caucus has proven that half of them don't know where their spines are, and the other half only sometimes make chirpy noises from the back that maybe we don't like Justin Trudeau. Maybe he should try doing a better job. But they never really pull the trigger to get rid of him. Plus, if you don't know this, the Liberal Party and every other party but the Conservative Party has signed on to the Transparency Act. The Transparency Act is basically just how caucus is governed in the House of Commons. That caucus has certain powers that allow them to basically hold leaders and other people to account within their party. So the Liberal Party has not signed on to this, which means that the Liberal caucus cannot vote to get rid of Justin Trudeau. They do not have to abide by it. Technically, it's non-binding even on the Conservative Party, but no leader would really want to say, I'm going to ignore the Transparency Act after their caucus votes to get rid of them. But the Liberal Party can't even vote to get rid of him because there's no procedure to do it, because they've never signed on to the legislation that enables it. It's wild. They thought this made them stronger for years, and now it's actually showing that they're weaker than ever because they can't get rid of a bad leader, because they wanted a strong man for years, and now that strong man who nobody likes won't leave. I think Trudeau actually probably has the gall to just wait this out so long that the Liberal Party doesn't even have time to do a leadership election, because Justin Trudeau is delusional, but I don't think he is delusional enough to think he can win the next election. I think he wants to go down swinging so then he can have like a comeback like his dad. That's the big delusional part, because he's not going to have a comeback. Nobody liked him. The Pierre Trudeau had kind of a nostalgia because while he had terrible policies that the West hated, the East probably liked some of his policies, so they were willing to have him come back after Joe Clark and others messed up. And so, he had a path. What path does Justin Trudeau have if Pierre Poilievre becomes the prime minister for 8 years and couldn't possibly do a worse job than Trudeau? Is Trudeau going to come by and say, I could mess this up really bad right now. How about you guys reelect me? There's no pitch here. Anyways, I want to go into some of the polling numbers, because some of these polling websites' projections are insane. These polling websites are pretty conservative in terms of their like the slowness at which they react to the polls. Not ideologically conservative. I don't think they're ideologically anything. In fact, I think some of the people who run these places may be more default liberals, but that doesn't matter. But they don't tend to be super anti-liberal in terms of their projections. They try and stay pretty neutral. All of these websites now either have the liberals in third place or fourth place in terms of the seat count. But before I get into that, I just want to remind you guys, if you like this show, make sure to hit the subscribe button, like the video, and leave a comment for me. It really helps me out. And you can always consider donating to our legal fund, linked both in the description below as well as pinned at the top of the comments. Anyways, so I'll get the right thing on screen. So we're going to start off with 338 Canada. 338 is hyper conservative in terms of how slowly they react to polling trends. If one really bad poll for the Liberal Party comes out, usually they'll downrank it because they'll say it might be an outlier. The Liberal Party seems to still be polling in the mid to high 20s. So if we see a poll that comes out that puts the Liberals at 21 or 22, we will rate that one down. And that's a perfectly legitimate way of doing things. You don't want an outlier poll to affect your overall sample, but they'll include very pro-liberal polls like Ecos and Nanos that tends to overpoll the Liberals. But even with all that being said, this is their current seat projections. 232 seats for the Conservative Party, with only 172 seats needed for the majority. The Bloc would come in second with 45 seats. The Liberals would come in third at 39 seats. The NDP 25, and the Green Party of Canada with 2 seats. That is impossible almost to suck that bad in Canadian politics as the Liberal Party. And this is actually the problem for the Liberal Party. Being the natural governing party of Canada actually can come back to haunt you, because natural governing party meant that the Liberals were kind of everyone's default choice if they didn't have a strong feeling about politics. So the Liberals could clean up a lot of seats in Toronto and Montreal where people are ideologically more liberal. But in places like Vancouver and Calgary, Edmonton, Winnipeg, the Maritimes, a lot of people who didn't have extremely conservative, not like extreme in a bad way, but like they weren't like diehard orthodox conservatives like I am, they might vote liberal sometimes. And so the Liberals are able to cobble together majority governments in a lot of ridings with like 37% of the vote, not very high vote counts, 42%, which even in Canadian politics is still not that big of a vote yet. In America, 42% is awful because it's a two-party race. So if you got 42%, your opponent got 58%. But 42, 38 is like thin margins of victory. And the Liberals have always rested in that little category of having very thin margins of victory in a lot of ridings. The problem with that is if you fall to, let's say, 20% of the vote, which is not impossible for Justin Trudeau right now. In fact, his average poll these days shows him at 20%. You basically win nothing. You win nothing outside of the island of Montreal. You got like 1 seat from all the Calistanis that vote for Suk Dhaliwal in Vancouver. You might get Rosedale. You might get Chrystia Freeland's riding. And then it becomes really slim pickings after that. Like maybe a Winnipeg riding goes for you. I'm actually lost. Maybe you win a territory. You win nothing past a certain point. And that's not even the worst polling projections for the Liberals. Polywave, which Sharia Teest on Twitter runs, it's a really good website. I'll link the website in the description below as well. He actually is, you would maybe consider him a little bit more of a hawkish person for the Conservatives. He tends to assume the Conservatives will do better than the polls tend to say, which I think in turnout has been true. The Cloverdale-Langley City by-election just showed that the Conservatives blew out the Liberals by 50 points. 338 Canada thought they were going to win by 26. And Sharia Teest, I think he reads sort of the momentum into the polls a little bit. He assumed that they were going to do better than 25, and he was right. They ended up doing 50% better than the Liberals. So look at this, though. His current seat projections show that the Conservative Party of Canada will get 248 seats. The Bloc 42, the NDP 26, and the Liberals coming in 4th place at 25 seats. And I think that this is absolutely realistic. The NDP, as much as the NDP is an utter embarrassment, we will talk about the NDP a little bit later in the show more. The NDP is an embarrassing party, but they still have better margins of victory in the seats that they do win than the Liberals do on average. And so the NDP hasn't exactly fallen in the polls. Some show that they've fallen, some show they've risen. Probably means that they haven't budged an inch since 2021. But that means that they actually might gain seats because the NDP, when they do win a riding, it would be like a Winnipeg Center riding. It'll be like a Hamilton riding, some of these Vancouver ridings, Vancouver Island ridings, where they can win 58% of the vote sometimes. Really unionish towns, trade union towns, public sector heavy areas of the country, very metropolitan progressive areas, university towns. Those are the places that the NDP can win. If those institutions are present or those demographics are present, they have a good ability to win seats. And now that the Liberal Party is falling, they can now win some of these more marginal Toronto seats where they used to usually only get 30% of the vote and the Liberals would win like 45%. Those seats are not safe at all. They just won, or they didn't win, but they got close in Montreal. They've also been close in other Toronto by-elections recently, and I think their numbers in that recent by-election in Winnipeg, it was a Manitoba seat, might not have been Winnipeg, showed that the NDP are at least maintaining most of their votes, although the Conservatives are coming up on them just from sheer popularity. A lot of Liberals are voting Conservative, not NDP. The NDP is just the Liberal Party with more dollar signs, effectively. They have more union scab, stool pigeon rhetoric, but it's still a metropolitan progressive party. And it's also really not a working class party anymore. It's a party for people who like to do this. It's the party for people who put their fists in the air and think they're super working class for doing so. It's a party that, frankly, has contempt for people who actually work with their hands. Unless your hands are typing up DEI reports on a computer, the NDP does not care about you, even if you're a unionized employee. In fact, they think that they don't like you if you work in a private trade union because you probably are in favor of oil and gas and industry and all that sort of nasty stuff. But so let's look at some of these other statistics from Polywave. Again, great website. This is what he is projecting as being the vote counts, the popular vote counts, which demonstrates my point from earlier. The Conservatives are going to get 46.5%, or at least projected yet. Liberals 20.1, NDP 18.5, Bloc 8.1, Greens 3.6, and PPC 2.3. Please, PPC, I'm not telling you guys to go away because I'm like, oh, I don't want you hurting the Conservatives. I don't think you can hurt the Conservatives, and that is not really something I care about. I'm not like, oh, I only want what's good for the Conservative Party. Guys, do whatever you want. I voted for you in 2021, but try harder. Try to do door knocking. I had a guy on Twitter just today tell me, well, door knocking is actually the least effective way of doing voter outreach. Are you insane? Are you smoking the devil's lettuce right now? Because what? No, most people are not on social media. In fact, most people don't really watch that much YouTube outside of more frivolous entertainment. You and I are the weird ones who end up engaging with politics online. Most people don't think about it too hard because, frankly, politics, if you think about it, is kind of boring. I enjoy it. I find it interesting, but I'm a dork. I'm a nerd. You have to actually go to people's homes and talk to them about politics, and not in an aggressive, hot-blooded sense, but hey, I'm running on this. I think we should be doing this. This program hasn't been working. Here's my information. Check it out. Voting day is on this day. It is so much more casual the way you have to talk to a normal person about politics. They don't care what the hashtags currently are on Twitter. They don't care about what trends are. They don't know who your favorite account is on Twitter at all. They don't know who I am. They don't know who even some of the biggest conservative YouTubers in the country are, or especially the PPC guys. Nobody knows who those people are. So you actually have to door knock at some point. But the Liberals are, again, suffering from the fact that their vote outside of the island of Montreal is spread out very thinly. And the funny thing is, the Liberals aren't losing any seats in Montreal really to the Conservatives. Conservatives can technically win Mount Royal. Anthony Housefather's seat, the guy who's saying that the vast majority of Liberal MPs want Trudeau to resign. Too little, too late, guys. Like, I don't mind Anthony Housefather in the sense I can agree with some of his opinions. I still think he's a pretty not awful individual if you look into his background. I called him out like a couple years ago, and he blocked me on Twitter because he called Clarence Thomas effectively an Uncle Tom for his decision on Roe v. Wade, for overturning Roe v. Wade. He basically implied that, well, Clarence Thomas must want slavery back for Black Americans. Yes, Clarence Thomas, a black man, wants slavery to come back. But that's just kind of the nasty person that Anthony Housefather can be. But he does get this outsized respect because now he's going after Trudeau. Okay, when it's convenient for him, he'll go after Trudeau. Once finally Trudeau has let all of the anti-Semites into the party, Anthony Housefather kind of makes a bit of a protest about it because all those people hate him for being Jewish. But at this point, Anthony, come on. You should have figured out you should have done something way before this. But yeah, it is not looking very good for the Liberals. And here are the regionals. I think he does a really good job displaying these. Charest does. BC, Liberals will get 0 seats. NDP 6, Greens 1, and Elizabeth May's fiefdom. Alberta, he is projecting 36 seats for the Conservatives, only 1 for the NDP. I declare that if you live in Edmonton, everyone should just go to Heather McPherson's NDP riding and campaign against her. She's awful. Prairie's 26 for the Conservatives. Ontario's 106 for the Conservatives, 9 for the NDP, 6 for the Libs, and 1 for the Greens. Quebec, it is just a block-centered area, and then the Conservatives are probably going to clean up in some suburbs outside of Montreal and Quebec City. The Liberals still get their 16, but it's pretty sparse. Their best showing in all of this, notice how their best showing is a third-place finish in Quebec. Technically, I guess Atlantic Canada, but a three-seat tie with the Atlantic, with like the NDP is not exactly a good result. It's embarrassing out there, and they deserve it. They absolutely deserve it. Because for the longest time, we were considered like radical or we're just fringe for disagreeing with Justin Trudeau on policy. Oh, actually, don't you know that the carbon tax actually puts more back into your pocket than you pay in it? No, it's not true. I don't care about all of the fake studies that people like Max Fawcett and Markham Hislop and all these other people come out with to try and tell you that carbon pricing is actually very good. It's actually very good. And I'm not saying it's like a fake study, like they're just faking data, but I can make a study to prove anything. I could make a study today to prove that the carbon tax lowers food prices if I was unscrupulous enough. And in fact, all the people showing that the carbon tax doesn't affect food prices that much are unscrupulous. Do you know what they do? The consumer price index is the stupidest measure of how prices are like increasing over time, because what it does is it just takes a generic basket of goods. The basket of goods that people are buying is just the average basket that people are purchasing at the grocery store, and it's just seeing how that price changes over time. And so what happens is, because it's measured by every quarter, so the CPI is prices over the last 4 quarters. What happens is that as people buy cheaper food because they're so broke, then it shows that, well, your basket of goods went from $100 on average to $103 on average. Wow, it's only up 3%. But if you kept buying the exact same products, it would have been $135. But they'll say, well, see, and the carbon tax only affected 50 cents of that $3, so it's a very negligible part of your grocery bill. But if you purchased the full $135 basket, it would have been like $5 of it. And it would have been a pretty big part of your grocery bill increase. But then they can blame a bunch of other factors. You can make a study to prove anything. At some point, common sense actually has to come into how you read the data, or it's a worthless document. Now, let's talk about the NDP a little bit more, because I don't like them. I don't like them. That's it, guys. I don't like the NDP, so we're talking about them. I'm just going to be shameless about it. This is a great clip from Alex Sultan. He posts, appearing to lack any self-awareness, Charlie Angus acts shocked about the Canadians being rude to him on the internet. He then brags of mass blocking people over his morning coffee. Who could wonder why the NDP has never really broken through into the mainstream in Canada, with people like Charlie Angus as their like flag bearers for the past decade? He's finally leaving office. My goodness.
I've been in confrontational situations as part of my job, but what I've seen just in the last few years is something very, very different.
By the way, this man mocked that Sherry woman who died because she wouldn't get the COVID vaccine and was denied the ability to get a life-saving surgery. He is worried about how people are acting on the internet.
It began during the final days of COVID. It began during Convoy, my first death threat, and then the second, and then the online abuse of like sort of this toxic pool of hate that continued to build. And then it began to appear in real life situations. So there's this Um, there's this atmosphere now of toxicity and rage where threat has become a normal way of engaging with public officials. The very first times I received online abuse, I sometimes reached out to the person and said, "Well, why are you talking like that?"
No, he didn't. That's a fake story. You can even tell he's trying to sound very considerate. No, you don't. You didn't reach out to the person the first time it ever happened. Oh, I'm shocked that somebody's abusing me. No. Also, Charlie Angus is just like Mark Garrettson for the NDP. He's just a loudmouth. And then he's like, "Oh, I can't believe people are pushing back on me. I only called them piles of garbage. I only called them racist. I only called them all every name in the book. And now they're suddenly all mad at me. Well, what are you mad? I'm only making fun of you." It's like, dude, you mocked a woman for dying. Ooh, I can't believe all this toxic hate's around. By the way, everyone gets death threats online. I get death threats online. It's not uncommon. By the way, who cares? Who cares? They're random anons.
Um, but then I would be inundated. There's times when there's sort of like almost like a concerted campaign to just drive you off Twitter or drive your Facebook into the ground. In the morning, I get up, I get a cup of coffee, and I block, 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 block.
Wow, what a brave warrior. Who wouldn't want that man representing them in office? Somebody that brave. He's so brave. I can't believe that we have people such as this in office. My goodness, though. But we have to raise the standard of what we expect from people. Here's what the Liberal Party we're just going to do the normal social media review I tend to do in these videos. Liberal Party 3 hours ago. Pierre Poilievre wants to make dangerous cuts. Dangerous cuts. He wants to make dangerous cuts to the programs and services you rely on. Check our new ads with Pierre Poilievre's cuts. You pay the price. Oh my goodness, it's so boring, guys. It's so boring. Get a good line. This is such a 2019 ad. Andrew Scheer is going to cut the services you rely on. That's very dangerous. Is it? Is it? Or is it the government's bloated? 63% in the last poll I looked at, might have been 65, but I'll say 63. 63% of Canadians think that the budget's too high, think that we spend too much money. That's unheard of in Canada. Most of the time you ask people, and as long as the finances of the country aren't spiraling into like the void, most people will be like, oh, of course we don't spend enough because it sounds compassionate. Most people, when there's a union strike with Canada Post, they'd be like, oh yes, worker solidarity, whatnot, and the union would get like 60% of people on their side. Most people are on Canada Post side because the unions are just full of bullies. Bullies trying to steal, let's just be honest, steal taxpayer money. They do not deserve this money. Canada Post's been losing money for years. They're inefficient, grossly inefficient. And then the union wants trans surgeries to be comped as part of their demands. No, guys, fire your union bosses and then figure out who is not stupid to represent you, and maybe we can negotiate. And maybe, just maybe, a good idea of how to get you guys paid more is to fire all the stupid DEI, ESG positions and get rid of morons in your union so then we can transfer money towards people who actually do work and away from stupid HR positions that the unions, in fact, actually demand. Because guess what? The unions can take loyal members off the streets, off as actual mail carriers and delivery drivers, and they can put them in cushy HR office jobs. That's actually how unions operate in Canada. They love administration and management. They used to not. In the 90s, there was almost a riot in the BC Nurses Union because they found out the healthcare system, more than 15% of the budget was being spent on administration, management, and HR. Because they're like, hey guys, we're doing the actual work. Why are you spending money on these people who aren't doing anything or who are basically just supplementary? But now it's like half of the money in some of these institutions in the education system, healthcare system is spent on administration, management, HR, and all that stuff. And the union upper levels don't say a word about it because that's how they reward good nurses, good teachers to them by giving them a co-principal job. Why do you think that Janice Irwin, the NDP MLA from Edmonton Strathcona, or I think it's Highlands Norwood, that one, why do you think she was only a teacher for about 5 seconds? Maybe a couple semesters, couple years, and then she became the co-principal of her school. Was she qualified? No. She's just a loyal union activist, so they gave her a very cushy job where she made probably almost 50% more than she did as a teacher to do less work. That's how all this works. Sorry for the rant, but that's my union rant there. I know some people are like, well, unions help get people more money, blah, blah, blah. Unions have also absolutely gutted much of the revenue from government that could have gone to actual working people in order to create stupid HR positions, because they are absolutely infected with a bunch of left wing woke social justice warriors. Anyways, so that should be pretty much it for me today, guys. Although I should show you a funny photo because I thought this was funny. Brittany posted this the other day, and I thought you guys would enjoy it. And because I'm releasing another podcast with her in a few days, it's going to be more heavily edited. So bear with me. It's going to take me a little bit longer. But I did like this one. If you've followed that, we were at the same event. She posted that we look like Dwight and Angela from The Office. So the similarity is stunning. And so I'll link that tweet in the description below if you want to look at it, because that's just kind of funny to me. I just wanted to mention that, but we're going to do a podcast that I'm going to release specifically on why social media politics is so annoying. It's kind of a response to the people like that guy I mentioned earlier saying, door knocking doesn't even work. It's like, guys, most people aren't on social media, and I'm going to show you that your own posts are very cringy and weird. So I'll be releasing that probably in a few days. I have to update my computer, and my computer rejected the update I wanted to do of it. But once I get that done, I'm going to finally repurchase Final Cut Pro. For the longest time, I was so broke, I couldn't even afford Final Cut Pro, and all I had was StreamYard. So that's why I do the show in the format I do, where I just hit the play button and I just talk. Even this video, probably about 20 times I had to restart the tape before I got the first minute right. Because if I can't get the first minute right, you would be, correct in thinking, oh my goodness, this guy's such an amateur, and click off. But now I finally have the money to actually afford Final Cut Pro. I used to use it, but my free trial ended. And so I had to just go back to doing this. But if anything, it probably made me better at making videos, because I had to get better at putting one foot in front of the other and knowing what I was going to say, rather than like so many YouTubers having to like jump cut between every 5 words because they cannot get all the ums and ahs out and make sure that they actually have a point. So this has been a lot of rambling towards the end of this video about how I do the show and all the other stuff that goes on, but hopefully you enjoyed that sort of thing. Remember to like this video, subscribe, donate if you want to the legal fund, and I'll see you guys in the next video.